goal of today's workshop is really just to kind of review the Connected Nation Texas broadband map that's out there, and to ensure that we can answer some questions there, but certainly how might you be able to leverage that. So without further ado, I'm Wes Kerr. I'm your host for the day. I'm the Director for Community Solutions at Connected Nation. With a little bit of, I want to provide a little bit of background as it pertains to Connected Nation's broadband mapping work in the state of Texas. Connected Nation was designated, or was given the designated entity status for the state of Texas back during the SBI from 2009 through 2014, and so on a semi-annual basis, Connected Nation was working to gather data, broadband data, and submit that information on the behalf of the state to the NTIA. Fast forward another 5 years, in 2019, Connected Nation Texas began work on a second round of state broadband maps, with the first of those being made available in January of 2020, with periodic updates until the most recent update, which was in January of 2022, January, the beginning of this year. Connected Nation is a pioneer in this space and has developed methodologies and maps that have led the way for much of the work that is being done around the country in broadband mapping. Connected Nation has worked together to gather data from broadband providers, from communities, federally available data, and develop validation and data analysis techniques to refine that information. Connected Nation works directly with stakeholders to incorporate feedback into maps, including information that is collected through the connected community process that many are familiar with. Where we've had thousands of responses about where broadband is or is not, and then we've had folks in the field, just field staff, working to validate whether or not service is available or whether or not the infrastructure necessary to make service available is there. Without further delay, let's dig in and start looking at the interactive broadband map. Again, certainly feel free to enter questions as we move through the workshop and as I'm discussing the different tools and data layers that are there. Certainly want to make it as useful and helpful for you as possible. So we're going to start out today looking directly at the Connected Nation Texas broadband maps. You can get to those by going to the Connected Nation Texas website, moving over and navigating through the Broadband Data and Solutions tab, and then moving to Mapping and Analysis. Here you'll see we have various different maps that are available: state maps, county maps. There are individual county maps for every county in the state, statistics that were derived from that data that was developed in early January of this year, released at the end of the month of January this year. And then there's the link to the interactive map. And while this loads, we'll go ahead and there's going to be a splash screen here. Again, that's just to ensure that you understand the time frame of when the data was submitted. We click on that. We're going to click OK. I'm going to close this because I've been on the site already today. And so you'll be presented with the Texas broadband map. Again, this is the final iteration of this particular map. As we know, new mapping will begin later this year, first from the federal government, as well as the state broadband office. When you enter the map, you'll have three different panes. We'll talk about them as panes. One on the left gives us all the various different layers and the ability to turn those layers on and off. There's the map view pane, and then there's this pane that we'll call the information pane. And so I'm actually going to, in order to give us a little bit more real estate, I'm going to drag that pane, the information pane, over, and we'll talk about it in more depth later. There are the standard general abilities to navigate the map. So you can click and drag the map around. You can, if you have a scroll mouse, you can scroll to zoom in and out. You also have the ability to utilize the plus and minus for zoom in and zoom out. The little house button will always take you back to the statewide view. And then these forward, they call them previous extent and next extent. They just let you navigate from one, if you have multiple zoom levels that you've been using, it just lets you bounce back and forth between those views. We have the locate providers by address. This is a very commonly used tool because it lets you put in an address, but it also gives you some other ways to navigate and understand what broadband data has been submitted for a particular location. We can use the locate boundary district tool. This tool lets us decide which kinds of boundaries we want to look at. We can utilize that, click on the counties. We'll just do Coleman County for today's purposes. Click apply. It's going to zoom to the county. It highlights it and added it as a layer in this pane to the left. Again, we're just going to close that. There are various options there. Go back to the statewide view. We have the ability to utilize measure tools. Again, this allows you, if you're looking specifically at a location and need to understand distances or an area that needs to might need coverage, or you're trying to understand how far it is from one area to the next, you have the ability to measure distance and area, as well as the ability to click on locations, and it will provide you with the individual latitude and longitude of that specific location. Then there's the ability to share, and so you can copy this link. There are multiple tools. Once you go into the link options, you can actually decide, once you've built out a map or you've got multiple layers turned on, you're zoomed to a specific location, you can share that link and it'll allow you to send that specific view out to whomever it is that you're wanting to share that information with. All right, let's dig in here. I guess let's go ahead and look at the locate provider by address. Again, we can use this to do a number of different things. Let's just do one Main Street because I didn't grab an actual address. We'll do one Main Street, Coleman, Texas, and you see it pops up. We're just going to get Main Street in Coleman, Texas. It's going to zoom to that location, and it's reporting to us the providers who have supplied information for that particular location. So in this instance, CCTC offers fiber here, and T-Mobile has a fixed wireless offering that they offer at this particular location. We're going to zoom back out to the statewide level. We're going to reset. If you're in the state and you just want to know what the maps tell you are available from a provider or broadband availability standpoint, you can click on this button here, the My Current Location. It will zoom to what it believes is your current location. The accuracy of that varies based upon how network providers may be providing geographic information about location. So for instance, it may be the closest, if you're on say you were on a DSL connection, it could be the closest central office. That may be where they offer geographic information. Fiber provider may provide at a node, potentially even down to a location. But you can click that. As I'm not currently in the state of Texas, it would zoom you all away from Texas, and we don't want to do that. The final thing here is the drop a point on the map. This tool is very helpful in that if we randomly decide to look at a specific location, we're just going to look here on this state highway. We're going to click on the map. It's going to zoom to that location, and it's going to report to me whether or not there's any broadband service being provided at that location. And according to what has been supplied, either directly to Connected Nation Texas or to the FCC under their 477 filing, Transworld Network Corp offers a 15x2 fixed wireless service at this particular location. To see what that looks like turned on the map, we'll turn on a 10x1, which would cover that. And you'll see that this is in a light green, which corresponds to an FCC service availability. So that means that this information for this particular location is derived from FCC's 477 data. And then you'll notice here to the right or further to the east, this darker green, which represents detailed service area. So that means that that particular area has data that was supplied to Connected Nation Texas, specifically for the purpose of representing their coverage area. So we're going to zoom back out, click on that home button, and zoom back out to the full extent. So now we're currently, because I have the 10x1 broadband granularity map turned on, or layer turned on, we're looking at 10x1 service around the state. Again, darker green are detailed service areas, and the lighter green are those areas that the data is being supplied by through FCC's 477. These tan, light yellow areas are representing areas with no service. So we're going to go back here to the top. You'll recall earlier that I selected Coleman County. Unless I delete that or change that selection, it will leave that query there at the top and allow us to turn it on and off. So we begin to look through the layers. We're going to look at availability. So at 100 by 10, you can see those areas of the state in dark green where broadband service providers supplied data about where their broadband services are available at 100 by 10 or greater. And then those lighter green areas represent those areas where information from the FCC's 477 supplements the granular data and helps us understand areas where 100 by 10 may exist throughout the state. We'll just work our way down 50 by 5, the exact same understanding here. Dark is the detailed data and lighter green is the 477. 25 by 3, which still stands as the FCC standard for broadband service in the state. So this is essentially the broadband service as it's recognized at the moment by the federal government for where broadband service does or does not exist. You can also click down and see 10 by 1. We're going to go back and turn this 25 by 3 on and look at a couple of additional layers that correspond with this. So one of the layers that we encourage folks to look at fairly often is the unserved household density. And specifically, as we look at this at the 25 by 3, so I'm going to turn that layer on. And we're going to zoom in just randomly here. I may be going back to the same areas unintentionally. But what you'll see here are, again, these dark green areas are the detailed areas that Connected Nation Texas received during the data collection for the last mapping round. The lighter green areas are those areas that supplement under the 477 submitted data. And you'll notice here that we have these crosshatched areas, and this means that there are no households in those specific census blocks. And then each of these larger pink, I guess it's a gradation of pinks, represent the number or the density of households in that particular census block that are unserved at 25 by 3. You'll notice this is a fairly large census block. If I click on that census block, hopefully it'll be quick and respond. Sometimes when we have a considerable amount of data turned on, it may take it a minute to do its query and return information. The lighter pink areas, as you'll note from the legend under the layers tab over here, the lighter the pink, the lower the density, the darker the pink, the higher the density. But it's important to take a look at these numbers because the geography of each of the census blocks is going to be different. So the number of square miles in each census block is different. So in this particular census block, there's only one household and it's unserved. So the density of households based on the square mileage there is 1.32 households per square mile, unserved at 25 by 3. We can look at a smaller one here. In this particular census block, there are 3 total households unserved. And based on the geography or the size of that leaves it at 2.48 households per census block unserved, or 2.48 households per square mile. My apologies. Again, just important to have a better understanding as you look at where the needs are in a community. You'll note that a lot of the geography, there's simply not any households in those locations. And as you move forward, if you know more information about where households are that maybe don't currently have or aren't currently represented as having a household in that particular location, that's the kind of information that communities should begin to keep an eye on, to try to make note of, as it may be more and more important in the future with future mapping products and mapping projects to have that type of information available as you look to expand service in your community. I'm going to turn these 2 layers back off. I'm going to turn on mobile. And you'll see that mobile is represented by a couple of different colors, actually 3 different colors, where data has been supplied to the FCC for mobile. That's represented under 3 different ways. That's your 5G ultra high speed, 5G designated, and then LTE designated. And then you'll notice there are areas where the tan or light yellow color is showing through, and those are areas where service is not being reported for mobile 5G and LTE broadband. We can zoom back out here to the state level, and we'll take a look at the density of providers by area at 25 by 3. Again, this just gives us an idea of the density of providers in areas around the state. And so you'll see that many providers, or in many locations around the state, there's single provider, many times just 2. And then obviously in our highly populated locations around the state, we're looking at 5 or more providers in any given location or any given census block area. And then if we look one more time here, this is at 10 by 1. And so even then you see a higher or an increase in the numbers of providers in various different areas around the state at 10 by 1. Max advertised download speed information. So this looks at those areas around the state, starting with 1 gig and above, and just is gradated based on darker blue down to the green in color as far as the speeds. And then these are the upload speeds, and you'll notice that upload speeds are as is natural as of late, much typically slower than we see the upload speed or the download speed. So if we keep an eye on this left-hand pane, other layers, we can turn on a number of other layers, and I should probably go ahead and turn this one off, at least for the moment. We'll go to other layers. So we can turn on, again, when I added that or did the query earlier, utilizing this tool right here, we still see Coleman County. It's right there. Below that, broadband infrastructure program. So we're going to be able to look at the various different broadband programs that have been out there over the past several years. The first one here, I think, is the BIP program back from 2021. You'll see a number of proposed service areas across the state. And each of these obviously will have different meanings for different audiences as you look at areas. We include the FCC's registered antenna service areas or structures. And so if it is related to the zoom level that you have on. So as I zoom in here, we should begin to see some towers pop up. And so you'll see that all the various different towers that are registered with the ASR are available on the map. It's good to note that essentially anything under 200 feet is not required necessarily to be included here. So you may know of infrastructure or towers near you that you don't find on this map, and it's because they may not be absolutely required to be registered with the FCC. But if you click on any of these, there's information related to who owns that tower, where it's located, so on and so forth. We can turn on the USDA Reconnect funded areas. I'm going to zoom back out to the statewide level here, as I believe there are only a handful of areas in the state, one here in the lower southern part of the state and over in the eastern part of the state as well. Community anchor institutions. So if you're looking specifically at your community and you're interested in being able to, quickly identify where certain community anchors are as it pertains to broadband, you may want to turn on different layers. And again, these are dependent on the zoom level. And so I've now zoomed in far enough that all of the layers are available. So I'm going to turn on the K-12 schools in the area, libraries, healthcare, public safety facilities, as well as universities. And you'll note that you can see there are icons for each of these. Those icons also make logical sense as far as what the icon is. So you're able to click on those, identify what that specific location is, and it makes it easier to understand if we have, say, 25x3 turned on in a particular location, where these are as it relates to various different broadband services or where service availability is. We may be interested in understanding where unserved areas are. And we'll go back and we're actually going to turn on these registered towers. And so if we're trying to make, we're thinking through how we might be able to serve a particular location, maybe we're interested in seeing if we can get backhaul through wireless backhaul into a location, or maybe there's an institution that should already have some sort of service backhaul service available. How far is that into a particular location? As we spoke earlier, we can go up and use the measure tools. We can identify how far it is from, say, a tower in general to the middle of an area. And we know that that's I'm going to clear this and we can do this. If you double click, it makes it will actually let you record the number there. So it's 3.3 miles from that tower into an area or over to an area that doesn't have service. You could utilize that to follow a road, various different ways to utilize these tools. But again, just trying to make these resources available, make it easy for you to understand what may be in a particular location or adjacent to an area of interest. I'm going to turn towers back off. I'm going to turn these community anchor institutions back off. Go over, turn these back off, and we're back in other layers. I'm going to start looking at FCC build out commitment areas. So we're just going to turn these on, and you'll see that these are demonstrated in a number of different colors based on what they are, the different programs that are out there. More importantly, though, we can look at the FCC commitment areas and deployments and begin to drill down into specific projects or programs. If we're interested in the ACAM areas of the state, let's see if we can get those to load up. Just keep moving down. Yep. Connect America Fund. I need to drop down a little tighter, I think, here. Yeah. So now you can see where these were Connect America Fund eligible areas. Connect America Fund phase 2 eligible areas. We'll leave ACAM turned on. You'll see the ACAM areas here that entered the screen. And then the most recent of programs being the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. And you'll see those areas where RDOF was available. If you click on a specific location, it's going to give you information about that RDOF location and who that provider was and that may be building in that particular location. We'll turn those back off. We're going to expand the subsidy programs here. So these are areas that have been deployed to. And you'll notice these look kind of funny. You have to be zoomed in. They look kind of funny as hexes. And so if we click on one of these, it's going to tell us some information about those locations. But if I double click and we keep double clicking, under all of these programs, these providers, when they built out their networks, were required to supply information about locations where they have deployed their services. And so if I click on that particular location, it's going to tell me who the provider is, the speeds that are supposed to be available when it was built out. And so in any of these particular programs under the deployments, you should be able to see what those locations or where those locations are in any given community where any of this funding has gone to. So I'm going to turn on those 3 programs and we can look at them collectively. So we can look here. We see that there were 124 in this general area, 51. And then you'll see each of these individual locations being reported. Typically, they are reported from the doorstep or very near. And so if we go to the base map gallery, you can always look at these differently, get an idea for how these could be used. We'll use the imagery hybrid And so what we'll do is now we can zoom in and we can see where each of these locations for these homes in this particular area have been reported as having service. They get hard to see, but if we click on one, CenturyLink offered a 10x1 provided 10x1 service that was reported back in 2019 as being available. To make it easier for us to view, I'm just going to go back to this navigation base map. We're going to zoom back out to the state level. I'm going to turn those off. There are community college districts. So there are a number of different districts. If you're wanting to get an idea of what, say broadband looks like at, let's just say 100 by 10 in a particular district, then you're able to turn those districts on, zoom into them. And once we get in close enough, everything loads. You'll begin to, it'll start to identify what those districts are. I believe if I click on it, it's going to tell us who that district is. All right. So community college districts, turn those off. Community college tax districts, as we looked at earlier, we can turn all the counties on for the state. We can also look at congressional districts, opportunity zones, school districts, state senate, and state house districts. The final layer here is this broadband adoption layer. And so this comes from the census. And so we can, if I turn off the broadband layer, makes it a little bit easier to see, but we'll turn this broadband adoption layer on, percent of households with an internet subscription. And so you can look based on the graduation of these colors. The lighter the color, the lower the subscription number. I will make note that the darkest color on here is greater than 85%. Again, and that's based on graduations there. The inverse there being those with no internet subscription. So we'll turn that on. Again, just different color for the graduations. And then finally, the density of households with no internet subscription. And these are reported at, I believe, the census block level as well. And those are all subscription based. So I don't see any questions at the moment. Are there any questions that anybody would like answered? I've got a couple more things I certainly am happy to show, but absolutely understand that these are, the maps are out there. Again, federal and new state maps will be coming likely over the next 6 months or so. We expect a new map from the FCC this fall. And then I'm sure that the broadband office will have theirs coming out after that. So we'll do a little bit of situational conversation. I guess I would be remiss. There are plenty of different map layers that you can try to add into the map. For some of these, particularly these that are provided by Esri, which is kind of the de facto standard for GIS or Geographic Information Systems mapping systems. They have a lot of data that you could throw in there, but you'll need a license for that. That said, there are plenty of other resources. You could spend days. I think there's it says there's over 10,000 items that you could look at, potentially bring into the map for your use. You can also, if you happen to, at a local county level, if you've got GIS data and you've got a server, you could point to that server, place the URL here and bring that data into the map to interact with. Or if you've got, say, a CSV, a KML out of Google Earth, or you have shapefile format data from Esri's mapping software, you could load all of that information into the map as well and use it as to interact with the broadband data. Let's do a little bit of just a kind of a how could this be used? How might we leverage this? We're going to go back, take a look at Coleman County again. I'm going to ask it. Well, I'm going to turn it on so I can identify. We're going to move into the county here. And we're gonna go back, turn on some towers, and say we are interested in the community anchor institutions in the county. So if we were interested in how we might get coverage from, say, this tower right here out to this area over here, a number of different things might be of interest. We may know that fiber exists here, and potentially a provider would want to bring fiber from that tower out here. More than likely, they would utilize the rights of way in the county to make that happen. And so they probably, at least it makes a lot of sense typically, that they might try to utilize the roads there. And so I'm going to get the draw tools opened up, because there's a set of tools over here in this right-hand pane. So I can draw. It's going to load those. And maybe I just want to draw a line that gives me an idea of where I'm going to and from. And so with the draw tool, I'm going to go on here and I'm going to click the location that I want it to follow. And we're going to follow the road very loosely. And you could do much better job than I'm doing. But for the sake of trying to get to this location. So now we've added a line onto the map. You could have changed the colors. We could change those colors to anything we want. We can also have it tell us the line segment length, if that's what we would like. You can adjust whether those are miles, feet. You can type on there. You can tell it to is there something specific you want to put down that line? We can go in, we can add notes by clicking on the map, add that text here. Just a number of different ways that you can annotate the map, add things that you're interested in, understand distances. You can understand the area that you're looking at. If we were interested in how big of an area this is that needs to be covered, we can go, we could go here in the area. Again, I'm going to do this loosely, but I can select this area and we'll going to double click, and we know that that's a half a square mile of area. And goodness, maybe they just built a new apartment building there and there's 30 new people that live out there. It's good to understand that geographically there's only a half square mile there, but maybe there are 30 people living in a new apartment building. That's important to be able to understand. And I think oftentimes as we talk with communities and stakeholders, one of the things that often gets, I guess, confused or overlooked is that sometimes when we talk about availability, we may see large availability numbers, 90+% availability at any given speed tier, and you may only have 60% of the geography of the county. And I think so often people just kind of, when we talk about percentages, we think geographically instead of population and actually households. And that's how Connected Nation is always reported numbers, is by household. So when we talk about a percentage of availability, that's at the household level. Right. So again, you could create a map in an area, kind of, this is what I want somebody to see. We'll go back to that share. I can hit this link option, and now I could go in here and this very map, I could keep the current map extent, which is going to take somebody back to this view. We can center the map on a zoom level. Don't want to do that. We could define an area or the center if we just clicked on the map and tell it that's where we want somebody to, when they come to this link, that's where it's going to take them. We could find a location, query a feature and zoom to it. There's so many different options here. And again, I think it's far more than we could cover today, but I want to make sure people are aware of the tools that are out there, how you can use these, how you can leverage it. Hey, I have a question about an area. How do we talk about it? You can do it right here. So once you've got that, you can copy the link, you can send that link off to somebody. You have the ability then pretty quickly to have a quality conversation about a specific location. We didn't talk about it earlier, but this zoom to location, you could put in I don't know, a specific a business. It's going to go out and do some queries and try to find that location. But certainly the best way, if you're interested in a specific address and what's available there, is again to click on this tool, the locate provider by address. I'm going to reset that. I'm going to use the drop a pin, and I'm just going to go right here as though I lived right there. It's processing it. And again, CCTC is there, T-Mobile, Transworld Network, all have offered or submitted data for that particular location. And it tells you the highest service availability that those providers offer. Again, over here on this right-hand panel, as we jump back and forth a little bit, there's an export. So you could export this screen as a PDF. There are various different file formats that you could use to export this, but that would let you export the screen. Save it out, send an email, send it to a friend, whatever it may be, however you think is the use of it is necessary. Still no questions, so I'm going to assume that we're on track. The last thing I want to make sure that we discuss or that we look at real quick is in this info pane. It helps understand the data that's out there, a strong description of the data that's out there, where different data comes from. And one of the things that we get questions about fairly often, sorry, where again, define the printable maps, lists of providers by county and by technology. And then one that comes up fairly often is how to download the GIS data, and that's downloadable here. It limits, there are limitations to what we're able to provide because of the NDA and the specifics of each individual provider's location information. But in general, these layers that you see here for availability at 100 by 50 or 100 by 10, 50 by 5, 25 by 3, and 10 by 1, those are available through that link. And to be respectful of everybody's time, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to assume that there are none. I will go ahead and begin to wrap up. I appreciate everybody taking their time to discuss today. It's my pleasure to be able to discuss the Texas Broadband Map. I look forward to any questions that you may have. I will be editing the video of this today, and we'll send that out probably within the next week. And so that will come out as a thank you and a link to this. We ask that you keep an eye out for the next webinar or workshop that we'll be having. We're actually going to do a virtual networking event in September. And so we look forward to having folks on and being able to converse and discuss amongst each other various different things that are going on as it pertains to broadband connectivity and use. With that, I thank you for your time, and I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you.